think the numbers are increasing, which is really good. So welcome to this webinar from DataCite about empowering African research communities through persistent identifiers and metadata. The agenda for this webinar, we are going to start with an introduction, an overview about DataCite. Then we have Sara El-Gebali, who is going to talk about metadata, FAIR, and also building connections using these open metadata information. Then we are going to have Dr. Fredrick Lugya from Busitema University Library, who is going to talk about connecting with DataCite infrastructure and their experience as well. And then we have Amanuel Zewdu from the Organization of Southern Cooperation in Ethiopia, who's going to talk about the integration of their platform GreSIS with DataCite infrastructure as well. It's another use case that we are going to share with the community in this webinar today. Then we have our ambassador, DataCite ambassador in Ethiopia, who also part of the Mekelle University, is going to talk about the challenges for increasing persistent identifiers adoption in Africa. Then we have Lamis Yahia from African Africa Reproducibility Network, who's going to talk about the value of persistent identifiers and open metadata, but from a researcher's point of view. As you can see, we have an extensive agenda for the webinar, so I really hope that you are going to enjoy staying with us for these 90 minutes. So we are going to start with an introduction about DataCite and who we are. But in order to understand where DataCite is coming from, it's really important to understand the full story. So as you may know, the UNESCO recommendation in open science that was published in 2021, they identified important 4 pillars in order for communities to achieve and to transit to open science landscape. These 4 pillars are open scientific knowledge, open science infrastructure, open engagement as well, and open dialogue with other knowledge systems. So when it comes to open science infrastructure or open research infrastructure, the UNESCO defined it as shared research infrastructure that are needed to support open science, and also it serves the needs for different communities. So the UNESCO also highlighted that these open research infrastructure are usually built by non-profit organizations, and it's really important to highlight this issue. And it's also these open research infrastructure provider, these initiatives or these organizations will be governed and driven and sustained also by this community, which is really, really important, so we can ensure a long-term sustainability for these organizations. So the goal is always to increase transparency and improve equity and fairness as well, and better support also for various research communities. We can also see in 2022 that the UNESCO published a document about bolstering open science infrastructure. And here we can see the term persistent identifiers. In this document, the UNESCO was talking about the importance of integrating persistent identifiers in research workflows. So, and even we can see in the footer of that document, they are talking about different bids, such as ORCID IDs for people, academic researchers and contributors, and also the UNESCO citing DataCite DOIs for outputs. So who we are at DataCite? We are a global community of research organizations. All of these research organizations are coming together because they want to ensure that research outputs and resources are openly available and connected. And why they want to achieve these goals? Because they want to maximize reusability to help in advancing knowledge across and between disciplines, and also now and in the future. So as a community, we make research more effective. How we do that? By using the metadata information, and my colleague Sara will highlight more and will share more details about that, of course, to connect research outputs and the resources. And when we talk about research outputs at DataCite, we mean all research outputs. We talk about samples and images to data sets and the preprints as well. So we enable the creation and management of digital object identifiers, DOIs. We also built integrated services to improve research workflows. And here in this webinar, we have two use cases from the community that we are going also to listen and to know their feedback. So DataCite is also a non-profit organization. Again, link that with the definition that the UNESCO issued for the non-profit or for the open research infrastructure providers, that they should be built by non-profit organization, and they are usually sustained by their community. So DataCite is a non-profit organization registered in Germany since the year 2009. In terms of the current DataCite community, we have more than 1,400 organizations that are part of the DataCite community. And here we are talking about a wide range of organizations. We are talking about universities, we are talking about research institutions, we are talking about national libraries, we are talking about national centers who are playing an important part in their countries or in their regions. We are talking about ministries of higher education. We are talking about a wide range of we are talking also about museums and culture institutions. So we are talking about a wide range of organizations that join the DataCite community. We have members from 57 countries, and so far we have issued more than 77 million DOIs. So DataCite DOIs are suitable for a wide range of research outputs. The first part is research datasets, collections, workflows, software script that has written while conducting a specific research process, images and models that are generated from a specific research process. DataCite DOIs can also support gray literature such as thesis and dissertation, also conference proceeding, slides, preprints, the initial version of the articles before sharing it with the publisher, technical standard, and all of the valuable research outputs that your university, your institution will usually publish it in an institutional repository. This is a screenshot from the DataCite registry, Fabrica, and as you can see, the 1,400 organizations that are part of the DataCite community are connecting and making a wide range of outputs more visible and more discoverable with DataCite DOIs. We can see we have the word data in our name, and we have more than 18 million datasets registered with DataCite, but we also, as you can see, support text files, physical object, preprint, software script, dissertation, books, conference proceeding, output management plan. So yeah, so this is some of the resource types that we support at DataCite. In order to join our community and become part of the DataCite and also start registering DOIs for your outputs, you need to obtain a membership or to be part of the membership through different options. The first option is a direct member. So this is when a university or a research institution will apply to join DataCite as a direct member. And in this case, if they have, for example, a general repository where they are publishing all of their ETDs, reports, conference proceeding, and let's say they also have a specialized data repository, so they can join and they can connect these two repositories with our infrastructure and start registering DOIs for their outputs. The second model, it's a cost-effective and more sustainable model. So this is when a group of organizations will come together, or when a national body at a country or a ministry of higher education or a national library in a specific country, they want to start a DataCite DOI consortium. And in this case, they will open the door for different universities, different institutions in their countries to join the consortium and to start registering DataCite DOI. So this is a cost-effective and also more sustainable option. Before I finish with the quick overview, I want to give a shout out to the ReFreeData registry. It's a global registry for research data repositories, and it's covering all academic disciplines and also ReFreeData. So if you have a data repository at your university now, it's really, really important to register it with ReFreeData, so you have the information about your data repository listed also there, and you can find all the details here. You can find if you are looking for a specific data repository, you can look and do search there. If you want to suggest, if you want to include a data repository, you can do that as well through their form. And it's a fantastic registry if you want to look and find more information about research data sets as well. And it serves different stakeholders, from researchers to funding bodies to publishers and scholarly institutions as well. So yeah, I believe this is the end of the first part. This was a quick overview about DataCite. And now I will hand over to my colleague, Sara, who is going to take us in a deep dive about metadata and the value of open metadata information.
Thank you very much, Mohamad. I'll just give me a second to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see my screen. All
Yes.
good? All right, thank you so very much for this introduction. My name is Sara El-Gebali, and I am a metadata specialist at DataCite. And today we'll be looking at the importance of metadata and openly available metadata that comes with persistent identifiers, and we'll show just how DOI metadata that is structured through our DataCite schema can enhance visibility, support FAIR principles and open science, and how we can leverage it to, answer some big questions and for both researchers and institutions alike, and how it could be used as a tool. So without further ado, first thing is DOI metadata. It is the descriptive information that we collect when a DOI is registered. So this metadata is essentially covers the key details, things like title, authors, publication date, and so on. And it is structured according to DataCite schema. So this means that it is standardized and it can work. It's usable across different systems, and it also makes research outputs identifiable. So basically, the main key benefits, we can say, identification, and make sure that the research outputs can be reliably identified and cited. Discoverability, it means that it increases the visibility by making the resources accessible on platforms that index research outputs. And interoperability, which means it enables systems to integrate and share metadata seamlessly. And this is to ensure that the research outputs are compatible with global research infrastructures. So it can be found, cited, and reused. And in addition, this structured approach supports, as I mentioned, FAIR principles. So it makes it findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, and open science. So what do I actually mean by structured? It means that it follows the DataCite metadata schema, which is specifically designed for our DOIs. So just very briefly, our schema is organized into 20 metadata properties. So these are higher levels. And we have also sub-properties and control list values. But on the property level, we have mandatory requirements. So these are the minimum information required for registering a findable DOI. And then we have recommended, which means that these ones should be included whenever they are possible. So this is to provide richer description. And finally, we also have optional. So these ones, they might not always apply, but if they are there and they apply, we very much strongly encourage you to provide it, because it enhances the metadata quality when they're completeness. So we're going to look into why this is important in the next few slides. But one more thing to mention about the DataCite schema is that it is very valuable because of its generic nature. So as Mohamad already mentioned, we support a wide range of resource types. So this to cover wide selection of disciplines. And this flexibility means that the schema is not just limited to data sets. This is really adaptable to various types of research outputs. And actually, as a matter of fact, today we'll be looking at one example of dissertations, but I'll save that for later on in the coming slides. So as of today, in schema 4, we are schema 4.5, version 4.5, we have 30 controlled list values that you're looking at. And also we have to date around more than 68 million DOIs, findable DOIs that are registered, and these come with a ton of metadata. And this metadata can help us look at trends, at patterns, help us understand the research landscape, and it also helps us answer some questions. So I'm gonna just have a selection of questions that we can answer. So some of these questions could be like, what kind of resources are being published? And their frequency of publishing them, who are the biggest funders, and who are they funding? We can also see how much of the research is actually being made openly available for use. So this is where we look at licensing and rights and the impact of open science, right? And we can monitor the uptake of open science practices. We can also look at how researchers are providing a bigger picture of the research by connecting like different research outputs, such as data sets, software, publications, and any other research outputs. How are they providing this to provide in a form that allows us to look at their output in its entirety and understand what happened within that research? So let's look at the first question. What kind of resources are being published? If we look based on we have two types of annotations here. We have the controlled list annotation, those 30 vocabularies that we saw, and alongside it we have free text annotation. So you're looking at resource type general, which is the controlled list, and resource type, which is the free text values that the users add on top of it. And based on this, the top 3 vocabulary choices are data set, text, physical objects. We also have images and software, but let's focus on those 3 main categories. And if we go to the free text, we see similar patterns in how people describe it further. So we have collection data or data sets. We also have articles and individual samples. So this is where the user has the option to add additional information on top of the controlled vocabulary. But we also see that about 17.7 or almost 18%, they are annotated. So people are not adding any free text there, but this could be because they have a preference for the controlled vocabulary, and it just covers what they need. So you don't have to provide more information, or it can be like that they just missed putting in that metadata. Yeah, but so this gives us an idea of what kind of resources are out there and more common. Another important question here is, who are the biggest funders? And let's start with this first part here. So based on we're looking at the number of DOIs that include funding information. So we have about 30, and we see here the major contributors, like about 34.3% this information coming from the National Institute for Fusion, National Institute of Natural Science, Japan Society. So here what we're looking at is the major information contributors about funders. And I'm saying this because whilst 34.3% of this funding information is from the National Institute for Fusion, this does not really give us the comprehensive assessment of the landscape, because we are actually missing a lot of that. We are missing about 72.4% of funding information that is not there out of those 68 million DOIs. So what we're looking at here is the fraction of the total registered DOIs that has that information, and then where this information, what does this information tell us? So this is why I've mentioned that it's really important to provide the metadata quality, metadata information or details, so we can have the full picture and we're able to assess the funding landscape instead of looking at a glimpse of the funding data. So that is also, that leads us to, we can answer the second part of the question of who are they funding. So we could link here the funding information to the researchers' affiliations that are associated with these research outputs. And that's where we can really begin to see how the funding flows from between institutions or individual researchers and a lot more. So, and for example, we see here the three top funders are all associated with the National Institute for Fusion Science. We can also see some other affiliations for the different, for other funders. So this is really why it's very, very important, again, to capture this metadata that allows us to see the full context and impact of other research funding. Another important thing as well to ensure that we are supporting open science practices and reuse is looking at license information here. And what we're looking at here is the word cloud that highlights the 500 most common types of licenses that are used or annotating the DOIs. Beautiful. You can see Creative Commons, a lot of open access, Creative Commons 0, 1, and 4, and all of sorts of open and permissive licenses. But it's also important to note here that we could standardize, so we don't have too many different spellings or annotations of the same license. So you have CC by 4, you also have CC by 4 and another CC by 4, and and that's the thing, we could standardize this because we have in the metadata schema and 4.2 in 2019 we introduced those properties, and also where you can annotate the rights identifier scheme and the scheme URI, which essentially enables you to use standardized identifiers for the licenses that you're using. So this makes it more machine actionable. So this rights information can be read more easily by machines, and makes it, of course, interoperable. So what else can you answer here? Citations. And I'm sure this is of interest to some of you. So what we're looking at here is the number of DOIs which have at least 1 citation record, or 2 citations, or 3 citations, so on. So we're looking at the number of DOIs that have at least X number of citations. So this is 880,000 out of 68 million is a very small fraction. And this is because we don't actually automatically capture this information. We rely on the repositories to provide it. So we don't really know the real number here, but this is what we get from the repositories. So again, why it is very, very important to have complete and rich metadata. And what we see here is the top 10 providers of citations. So these are the people who have actually contributed to this information, citation information. So we have CERN, we have GBIF, and Andreas and other repositories. And would love to see more repositories providing this data as well. So far I have been talking about metadata and descriptive. So tell us what citations you have, which funders you have, which researchers are affiliated, But all of these are connected together because the metadata also includes connection metadata that allows us to document this relationship between the entries. So, if you're working on a project and and you're looking at it from, you want to identify everything that's related to this project, connection metadata allows you to trace back through the network of related people, contributors, institutions, and work as well. So by capturing these connections, we can have a more integrated, transparent research environment. And one of the key features here is that these connections, we can create them using other persistent identifiers. So we have ORCIDs, we have other DOIs, we have RORs, we have, these other DOIs that build that network of connections. Right. So let's have a look at how connection metadata looks like in, for example, dissertations. So I promised you an example of dissertation, so here it is. We have about 1.2 million annotated dissertation, 1.2 million DOIs with annotated with research type as dissertation. So what we're seeing here is this knowledge graph that represents like the dissertations alongside with their connections to people, to organization, to repositories, to funders. So and I'm going to show like a very concrete example of how this looks like, but this is briefly, it shows us like the relationship that this X number of dissertations have with various other entities. So in very concrete real life example here is, if you look at one of those registered DOIs, it has an dissertation as a research output. Dissertation has a DataCite DOI. It's connected to a creator with an ORCID ID. It's also connected to a publisher, different types of contributors as a supervisor, hosting institution, data manager. And for some of these, they also have persistent identifiers. And what we would love to see, obviously, is hosting institution benefiting from a ROR ID, for example, or a publisher, or so on. So we would love to see this like as a complete example that encapsulates what is this research output, who are the people and the organizations behind it, and what roles they've had. Yeah, so with this example, I just want to summarize here and say metadata does matter. Metadata matters a lot, and the DOI metadata specifically offers us like a very, very powerful lens to look through it, where we can assess so much information, which is openly available as well. And we can see the research landscape in with its connections and how it evolves over time, and we can see trends and so on. So metadata matters. High quality metadata is very, very important. Building connections, so connection metadata is also very, very important. It helps us see the big picture, and capturing things like fields like rights, funding information, contributors. These are fundamental to create the transparency that allows us to reuse the research and trust in that research. And all of this is to drive open science and transparent research practices and fair implementation. So I'll just leave you with one more thing, that we've recently launched DataCite Suggestions Hub. which is a new community feature that allows anybody and everybody to come to us with the suggestions for help, and you can contribute with your ideas and your input. Yeah, so let us know how we can enhance our work, and we really appreciate all of your feedback. So with that, I'm really happy to take any questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sara, for giving us this very detailed insights about the value and the importance of metadata, but also the importance of high quality metadata. Now we are going to have Dr. Fredrick Lugya from Busitema University Library in Uganda, who is going to talk to us about their experience connecting with DataCite infrastructure.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon and good morning, based on your location. Fredrick Lugya is my name. I work with Busitema University as the university librarian. I'm here to talk to you about the experiences of Busitema University in regards to how we are trying to implement DataCite infrastructure, how we've been able to integrate DOIs into our two institutional repositories. This, first of all, it started as a project which was funded by DataCite under the Global Access Fund, and I was the PI. The main activity was to call a workshop where we trained participants from Consortium of Uganda University Libraries in Uganda. And the workshop took place from 27th to 31st of May, and it attracted 35 participants. It took place at Busitema University. So the contents of all the training materials is archived and accessible through the library website. And we've been able to structure the materials based on the days of the workshop to ease access, but they are also archived in our institutional repository. So one of the things that we did was to create an action matrix so that we can be able to track how our participants, actually we gave a name, DataCite cadres, to these participants. The word cadres, in Uganda, we use it, I borrowed that term from our president. He normally refers to a group of individuals who are being trained to be champions. They are regarded as cadres. So we refer to these participants as cadres, DataCite cadres in Uganda. So we track everything that they do, and then we see how that fits into the outcomes of this project. So we use this as the tracker. So these are some of the things that we've been able to achieve, and I'm going to go over each of these in the next slides. First of all, we've seen 6 institutions have held engagement meetings with their university management on open science, DataCite, open infrastructure, and then we've seen 8 institutions have responded to a grant. There was a call for applications by the Consortium of Uganda University Libraries to establish institutional repositories in Uganda. And out of our 35 cadres, 8 of them responded to this call. And that was a plus, and we supported them in the application process. 6 institutions conducted awareness sessions at their universities on open science, open access, and data science research discovery. And one of the things that we've done is this year, we paid for DOIs as Busitema University. And our goal is to integrate DOIs on over 4,400 records. And these records are in 2 institutional repositories. We should have achieved this by December of this year. This is one of the institutional repository. This institutional repository is running on version 5. And here I thank DataCite technical team for having supported us in configuring this old IR version of this space to be able to accept the DOI assignment. So that was a bit of a curve when we are trying to do this work. This is our new institutional repository where we are uploading all the new records, and it was easier to work with this version. This is version 7.0 of this space. We also created a forum. Now, this forum, which we refer to as the DataCite and Open Scholarship Cadres Forum. On this forum, cadres post articles, post experiences, they call out activities in their universities, and then they post them here. It's a blog accessible over the web. Anybody can access it. But if they carry out an activity, then they can be able to report it on this forum. There has been a slow adoption of this by the cadres, but we still encourage them to do that. And it's available online on the public domain. We are looking at alternative sources of funding. Sometime at the beginning of this year, we applied for funding. Unfortunately, Busitema University didn't go through. This was a huge expectation, but it was quite disappointing because 5 out of the 11 reviewers indeed accepted that this was a very good proposal. However, the other 6 didn't accept that it was a good proposal and therefore didn't go through. And one of the things that we are looking at was how to get seed funding so that Busitema University can become a community membership so that we can have all the other members of COOL become part of this membership. Right now, Busitema University has identified some money to pay for our membership, community membership next financial year in 2025. And after paying this membership, Busitema University will lead the community membership subscription to DataCite, such that we can bring other institutions on board. And this budget is taking 0.717% of the library budget. As one of the members who participated in our workshop, Uganda Matters University responded to the call for Global Access Fund. We are yet to know the outcome of this. We hope that if it goes through, then Uganda Matters University will become another institution which will conduct other activities in a way of helping to galvanize our membership, the membership of Uganda to DataCite. I already talked about this. Busitema University is exploring all possible ways of how we can get community membership so that we can lead the community membership for Uganda in the year 2025. We are still looking for alternative ways to identify funds so that we can be able to call out activities. Thank you very much for listening to me. That is the Busitema experience.
Thank you so much, Fredrick, for sharing this use case. It's really, really interesting to know about all of these development that is happening at Busitema University. So now we are going to have another interesting use case. We have Amanuel Zewdu from the Organization of Southern Cooperation in Ethiopia, who is going to talk to us about their experience integrating their GreSIS. I hope that I'm pronouncing the name in the right way with DataCite. So the floor is yours, Emmanuel, now.
Thank you very much for this and very insightful presentations, both Fredrick and Sara. So yes, my name is Amanuel Zewdu. I'm the lead developer for the Greater South Information System, and we have through our efforts integrated with DataCite, which I'll be talking about today. So before I jump into that, though, I would like to take a minute to introduce the Organization of Southern Cooperation, why the Greater South Information System, who is it for, and through the integration with DataCite, how it has helped us in our efforts to democratize knowledge. And finally, I'll be talking about how we have enriched metadata through AI And finally, we'll talk about how you can join the revolution that we are undertaking. Okay, so the Organization of Southern Cooperation is the first intergovernmental organization of and by the South, which acts as an instrument for intellectual, technical, and financial cooperation and solidarity between member states and associate members in the pursuit of the third way of development. But what is the third way of development? And within this 15 minutes, I don't think I'll do it justice to define what the third way of development is. Rather, I'll take this opportunity to invite you all to join a series that has been started by our own Secretary General that has been happening for the past 10 weeks, which goes in depth about the third way of development. That said, from these 6 sectors within this, the one that is more related to our topic is balanced and inclusive education. And I'd like to talk about that. So balanced and inclusive education basically has 4 pillars, which is interculturalism, which talks about how cultures are interdependent and interdated between each other, and how we should include that in the educational domain. We have dialecticism, which talks about escaping from the norm where the teacher is the custodian of knowledge and the student is just an empty receptacle. And instead of that, the student becoming the protagonist and being part of that dialogue where they can also contribute to the learning process. Then we have transdisciplinarity, which talks about including non-academic knowledge into the academic discipline. So we'll have a more inclusive, more holistic approach towards education. And finally, we have contextuality, which talks about having our values, having our culture, which is very important to be included as a context in our education, so that we are more, learners are more, can feel like co-owners and co-creators within the process. So I mentioned these because these are integrated more or less with within the Greater South Information System, or GreSIS. So why GreSIS? Basically, it's meant to solve 2 problems. The first one is there is an increasing dependence for research and researchers to depend on big, profitable academic publishers. And this has caused an inequality in knowledge inequality between the global North and the global South. And this, well, basically results in 2 things. One is knowledge is delegitimized because of their control in each sections, or what you call life cycle of knowledge, which is starting from the access to production, validation. Since they control that, they have a say in who produces knowledge, how it's circulated, and what forms of knowledge are actually considered legitimate to be part of the knowledge domain. The second part is knowledge capture, which means these few profit-making companies could not only consolidate the knowledge, but also the technologies and the tools that are used to produce or validate and have access to this knowledge. So how is GreSIS meeting this challenge? Basically, what we want to do is create a paradigm shift in the knowledge domain so that people or individuals or researchers from the global South can have the ability to have the access and the production and validation and usage of their knowledge. So what is GreSIS then? Or what is the Greater South Information System? So it's basically a digital collaborative hub developed through open source technology to democratize access to and production of knowledge within the Greater South. Currently, it's free of charge for member states and associate members. And through reciprocity, we can also accept non-member states to give us their repository, and we in turn give access to GreSIS. So what is the impact that we hope to get? So the first thing is access. We want access to not just academic knowledge, but we want to provide access to even non-academic knowledge or endogenous knowledge. And we are trying to do that through, I'll talk about it in depth, but we have all resources available in the 4 OSC languages, which is Arabic, French, Spanish, and English. Then we want to collect and preserve endogenous knowledge from the Global South. And we also want to make higher education more accessible and also improve the quality. And finally, we want to develop and scale up collaborative transdisciplinary research within the Global South. Okay, so who is it for? So our main target is the higher education, since we're talking about research, so that higher education institutions and people that are related, researchers, scholars, educators, and all the affiliates. Then we have the researchers, institutions, the libraries, indigenous people, even civil societies and governments. Currently, like I've mentioned, we have made it exclusively available for OSCE member states and associate members, but through reciprocity, we can have your repositories ingested into GreSIS so that it will have more visibility as we make it available in the 4 OSCE languages, and you can in return gain access to the Greater South Information System. So we have lots of plethora of features and capabilities within GreSIS, but for the topic today, I'll choose 2 of them to talk about. One of them is the automatic DOI registration, and the other one is enriching metadata through AI. So let's start with the DOI. For the DOI, it has helped us within 3 categories by integrating with a DataCite. We are able to first foster collaboration, since we have different researchers that will be hosted on GreSIS. They themselves can collaborate through these persistent identifiers. One is through the DOI, so you will have seamless citation, as well as the registration of ORCID IDs and all of that are attached within that metadata, so people can find each other and collaborate. The next is accessibility and global visibility. Like I've said, not only do we have researchers on GreSIS, but we have managed to translate these resources, at least the metadata, to be available in 4 languages, which automatically increases the visibility of one research. For example, in Latin America, could be in Spanish or Portuguese, now can be read or accessed by a person maybe in the United Arab Emirates or Africa, and they can utilize that research. And finally, thanks to DataCite's infrastructure, which supports a lot of types of resources, we are able to also host endogenous knowledge, which are usually in the form of audios, videos, and if we're talking endogenous technology, it could also be software. So these are all available within DataCite infrastructure, which helped us to preserve these types of knowledge. Okay, as you can see, this is just a few screenshots that I wanted to show basic functionalities. As you can see, we'll have the digital object identifier that lets you either copy and paste the DOI that already exists if it's a published work, or for you to create a new one by just clicking Get a DOI. You have versioning on the left side or on the right side. Then you have a seamless citation. And finally, you have a DOI badge for you to get more information. Okay, so now that we've talked about the DOI section, the other one I wanted to talk about was enriching metadata through AI. So the way we've been doing that is we have been automatically translating every resources that come into GreSIS into the 4 OSCE languages. We currently have around 400,000 resources within GreSIS, each having their own DOI, and each having their own metadata that has been translated into the 4 OSCE languages. But we didn't stop there. So we have the metadata, but once you find, let's say, research in Spanish, but you're an English speaker, you would want to also use the documents, which brings us to the on-demand translation. So once you find your research, as you can see below, you can simply hit translate and translate the document into one of the 4 OAC languages, and you can utilize the research as well. All right, that brings me to the last part, which is basically a call of how you, as a protagonist, can join the journey of our transformation. So these are 6 easy steps that you can follow. First, you would want to explore the platform itself, which is hosted at gresis.osc.int. Then you can contact us using gresis@osc.int to start the enrollment. And then which will lead you to the expression of interest form, at which point, once you fill it out, you can assign an admin to manage your institution for GreSIS. And then you will have 3 options. You can either join our enrollment webinars, you can contact us briefly for an enrollment session, which would take about 10 to 15 minutes. Or you can, if you're feeling tech savvy, you can basically use our onboarding videos and guides to onboard yourself onto GreSIS. Then, well, it's not mandatory for member states, but you can share your repositories. So if you already have repositories, by giving us access and we ingesting it into GreSIS, we'll give it more visibility, like I've said, because at least we'll do the translations and have a wider visibility. And finally, once you're joined, you have the option to explore, share your work, contribute, and do more, and join the revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanuel, so much for sharing this very interesting development. Again, this is a gentle reminder. If you have any questions about any use case, please post them in the Q&A section. Now we have Tekleweyni Geday, who's going to talk about the challenges of increasing PIDs adoption. I will share the recording, your recording. Tekleweyni, let me share my screen. I hope that you all can see the screen now.
Sorry, there is no voice. The volume is not there.
Sorry, you can't hear the voice?
No.
No.
Okay, so maybe in this, not sure what is the problem because I can hear the voice. It's in the maximum.
It's not coming out at all.
Okay, so maybe Tekleweyni,
No.
you can present live then in this case.
Mohamad, I think you need to choose the like the audio settings where to pick it
Okay.
up.
Audio setting. Okay, I think it's better if Tekleweyni, you can go ahead and present it directly.
May I proceed?
Yes, but we are still looking to your screen. Your screen is still loading.
Okay, thank you. First, I would like to thank the moderator for introduction and for facilitating this important session for our communities. Now, these are the basic contents. This about open access or open science, it is already mentioned by Mostafa earlier, but it is very important to note that open access can facilitate our problem-solving process for our interconnected world. So to realize the open access or open science implementation, UNESCO has a wonderful recommendation that can be an exemplary for diverse nations and institutions. Accordingly, Ethiopia adopted a national open access policy by 2019 in collaboration with Electronic Information for Library, EFIL.net, and the Consortium of Ethiopian Academic Research Library. Several institutions established or formulated open access policy based on the national and international directives, but some universities doesn't cascade the national open access policy. As volunteer DataCite ambassador and as research communities, we need to work other organizations to formulate open access policy and create enabling environment according to the UNESCO recommendations. So about the persistent identifiers, it's very important for researchers. It's already explained by other panelists as well. So we choose DOI rather than URL. Why? Because it is stable. DOI is standardized. So we do have different kinds of DOIs, but I want to focus on the, we have different kinds of persistent identifier, but I want to focus more on the DOI, digital object identifier for research output, and the international generic sample number for physical sample and archival materials. Ethiopia is a huge country. Some African countries are huge potential in indigenous knowledge as well. We need to explore this capability. So metadata is an important and it is well explained by another panelist, by the DataCite metadata specialist. So the power of metadata cannot be underestimated. DataCite provides different kinds of services, registration of DOI and IGCN for different kinds of materials. It allows important possibility for integrating initial repositories and publishing systems. It has a strong support with its DataCite resource and teams and ambassadors. It provides funding opportunity for underrepresented regions. It has also an important, it works with RISD data to identify quality research data repositories. When you see DataCite services has multiple advantages for different scholars, institutions, and publishers, as well as funders. By creating a stable link, it allows for visibility and enhanced discoverability. It is researchers can meet funders' requirement because most of funders demand proper DOI or citation practice using DOIs. Therefore, publisher, if institution can measure its impact easily, there is several platforms for measuring their research impact, for ensuring research integrity, for improving partnership and knowledge sharing. The institution can be, you need to utilize DataCite services. It is also similar for publishers. Mekelle University, for example, we have an online journal system, but if we include the DOI service to our repository or upon online journal systems, it has several advantages. We can improve the quality of research, we can improve readability, and we can compete with global publishers. Finally, DataCite service ensures findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable for scholarly outputs, and it ensures care principle, collective access, collective benefit, access control, responsibility, and ethics. Finally, it helps to meet sustainable development goal in as global community and non-profitable organization. The other important tool is RISD data. RISD data is an important tool. It is already explained by Mohamad Mostafa earlier. But I want to recommend you one thing. More than 3,300 repositories are indexed globally now. 43 are from Africa as of November 16, 2024, and more than 1,189 are indexed only in United States of America. So there is a huge gap. We need, as African research community, we need to close the gap. And I invite you to see the RIS3 data demonstration on my YouTube channel. So what are the challenges? There are several challenges identified by DataCite with its stakeholders, including me. There are low level of awareness about persistent identifier. There are technical gaps, there are policy issues, there are financial barriers and implementation problems. So as a volunteer DataCite ambassador, as research community, as research organization or academic organization, we need to try to fix these problems for the sake of our organizational benefit. We can improve the awareness by creating such sessions, webinars, or educational platforms. We can close the gap, the technical gap, by utilizing DataCite resources. We can advocate for implementation of open access policy and incorporate PIDs as main pillar of their publishing system. We can, to minimize the financial barrier, it requires important focus from the government body. The institution should budget from internal revenue or should seek other external fundings. So how organization can join? First, if there is a research community, if there is an organization, they want a bench of availability of scholarly contents. Of course, there is a possibility any organization want to boost research productivity. To do so, they must align themselves with the contemporary research ecosystem in relation with open science. To do so, we need to create, as volunteer DataCite ambassador and as a research community, awareness creation session is very important in modern day research data management. According to UNESCO recommendation, we need to create enabling environment using the policy. We need to implement infrastructure. Then there is a need. We can ensure we can provide appropriate services to our public as well as local communities. To do so, we need to know the DataCite membership requirement. After knowing the DataCite membership requirements, there is a website, there is clear guideline. Then we can approach to the top management for decision making. Then the management can secure budget and can plan for sustain the service for their community. To do so, you need to communicate. Organizations need to communicate with DataCite team members as well as other ambassadors, but I recommend you to contact with DataCite team members for clarity. Then if the organization can decide the membership, if they become members, they can utilize data service effectively. Later on, they can share our best practice to global community and local communities.
Hello, Tekleweyni. Can you hear us? Hello.
I think he's having connectivity challenge.
Yeah. He's about to finish. Let's just wait for a few seconds. Anyway, he was almost, this was his last slide. So thank you so much, Tekleweyni, for your presentation and also for all your valuable efforts in raising the awareness among the community. Now we will move to Lamis Yahia from ARIN, who is going to talk about PIDs and metadata information, but from a researcher point of view.
Thank you, Mohamad. Let me share my screen. Okay. So I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yes.
Is it okay? Okay, perfect. So again, thank you very much for DataCite for this wonderful opportunity. And I'm Lamis Mohamad Al-Khair. I'm the co-director and the training lead of the African Reproducibility Network, which is basically a network that's trying to enhance the adoption of different open science practices among African scholars all over the African continent. And today I'll be talking about how you as a researcher could maximize your impact with the help of PIDs and ORCID IDs. And also I'll talk a little bit about the power of comprehensive publishing and how it is really gaining momentum now on. So for the outlines, I'll talk about the evolution, the evolving landscape of research outputs. I'll talk a bit about ORCID, and also I'll end with the call of action that we could, hopefully all of us could relate to. So I'll start with the evolving landscape of research outputs. And what we could see in the past couple of years is that, you know, the view of research output is expanding. Yet, you know, somehow in Africa, we're still stuck on the traditional focus, which is journal articles, you know. When we think about research output, the first thing that comes into our mind is a journal article. And usually this is the only thing that is published, you know, and this could be a research that is going on for like decades or many years, but then the only outcome that comes out of this research is a journal article. And this is becoming, you know, more of a outdated focus, because now there is a more, you know, more types of research outputs. So for example, research output could be in the form of preprints, in the form of data sets, software and code, reports and white papers, conference presentations, samples and physical connections, patents, even peer review reports, or even lectures, for example, because most researchers are also academics, and, you know, preparing lectures is part of the, you know, output that they could present. And again, also, when we're talking about open peer review, now we could also use our peer review reports as a source of research output. And each of these outputs contribute to the scholarly records of your research narrative as a researcher, you know, because as a researcher, you do so much more than just, you know, that final document that sort of summarizes everything, you know. While creating this journal article, definitely you've you know, collected some data sets, you've collected samples, you've used some, or maybe you've developed softwares and codes, or used certain codes for the analysis. So all of these are becoming more and more important research outputs that researchers could, you know, showcase to sort of, you know, prove how proficient they are, and show that they are doing a lot of work. So, of course, there are many benefits to publishing all type of research outputs. And one of the very first or most important benefits is that, you know, when you publish many outputs, you increase the visibility and impact of your research, you know, because maybe you have someone who's interested in the code, but not necessarily in the results. Maybe you have someone who's interested in the data. So when you have outputs for all of these people, then you increase the visibility and impact of the hard work that you did. Of course, a very important aspect is reproducibility now, you know, because many people publish articles, and unfortunately, when other scientists come and try to reproduce the results, sorry about that, when they try to reproduce the results, then, you know, they can't. So this raises a lot of questions about the integrity of the research, and, you know, if a research is not reproducible, then it will raise questions about whether, you know, the research is truthful or not. But when you publish everything related to the research, you know, you increase the possibility of your research being reproducible. So let's say you publish the data, you publish the code that you used for the analysis, you publish everything that comes with your research, and this eventually help make your research more reproducible. And as I said, it also facilitate collaborations because, for example, as I said, maybe someone is interested in your data and then they could contact you and you could start collaboration, on a new project and so on. So this comes hand in hand in increasing the visibility of your outputs. And again, of course, this, when you publish everything, it provides a complete picture of your research contributions. And, it will, especially, we know that researchers or research coming out of Africa is sort of automatically faced with a lot of bias from the international community of that research being not really of good standards or of good quality, Unfortunately, this is a bias that is out there. But when you publish everything and when you sort of put all the proof, that your work is well executed, then, slowly we'll start to remove this bias that the global research community have towards African researchers and research done within African countries. And of course, the biggest goal is to support open science, as we know that the open science movement is really gaining momentum. And in a few years, open science is going to be a must. It's not just going to be an option that you choose, So when you are already comfortable with publishing, everything, then you've already now joined the open science movement. Then, so the question is, where would you put these research outputs? So these research output could be deposited in repositories. And the importance of that is that when you deposit, for example, your data, your code, your samples into a repository, it ensures that it's preserved for the long time. And I can give you a personal example. For example, for me, I'm Sudanese, and I think most of you know that Sudan is currently undergoing war. And for example, many of my colleagues and even me, since we had to flee our houses in a rush and our institutions, we lost a lot of work, and because this work was not preserved in repositories, it was just, printed and saved maybe on personal computers or in personal cabinets in our offices. And at the blink of an eye, we lost everything. So you can imagine how important it is to use these repositories to ensure the long-term preservation of your work, and that whatever happens, you don't lose your work. And again, as we said, of course, it increases the discoverability of your work. And again, we can see more and more that funders and journals are requiring, for researchers to deposit these research outputs. For example, many journals now, where you're submitting an article, they ask you to submit the data with the submission. Otherwise, your sorry about that, your work will not be published. And so are funders, they are requiring that each and every output that comes of a research that they fund should be deposited into repositories and should be made open access. And this is, of course, to ensure that anyone could benefit from this information. So sorry about that. And again, of course, this is also facilitate data sharing and reuse. And one of the most important advantages of depositing research outputs in repositories is that these repositories, most of them allow you to get PIDs, for example, DOIs. So suddenly, that, let's say that lecture or that presentation that you had in your computer, now you can, share it with everyone, and share it with a DOI that will always attribute the work done to you. And again, it will be preserved for a long term. And there are many types of repositories. I think they were mentioned here and there in the previous presentations. But for example, we have institutional repositories. We have disciplinary or domain-specific repositories. For example, we have Archive or GenBank, PDB. There are many domain or discipline-specific repositories. We have general purpose repositories, for example, Zewdu and Figshare. For example, now the slides for all of this webinar has been shared with you via Zewdu. We also have data repositories, so repositories where you could, only add or upload data, for example, such as Dataverse. And we also have preprint repositories such as bioRxiv, chemarchive, and like these preprint repositories are increasing every day. And so it's very important that you pause a bit and select the right type of repository to deposit your research output, because when you deposit it to the right repository, you will gain all the benefits that we said previously, increase your discoverability, increase the reuse of your data, and so on. So it's very important that do a little bit of homework before depositing your research output, and select the right repository for doing so. So, of course, there are best practices to publishing research outputs, many of which were already discussed. But of course, some of them are just really obvious, but surprisingly still, like you can see many published outputs that don't have these details. So you have to have a clear descriptive title that clearly describes your research output, and metadata. You have to add metadata to your research output so that it would be more discoverable, more usable, and more easier for people who want to use it to understand exactly what's in your research output that you've deposited. And it's also very good to include detailed methodology. For example, if you're talking about a data set, it's really good, to describe how this data was acquired, and also any documentation that would help the reader or user to understand your output better. And it's also important to use open file formats because, as we said, the world is moving towards open science. So, for example, it would not be good practice to, for example, publish a document, for example, in using a format of a software that the other person, if they want to use it, they have to buy it. This would not be good practice. So you have to use formats that will allow users use whatever software that they could use to access your research output. This is very important. And finally, and again, this has been discussed a lot, you have to assign appropriate licenses for the reuse of your research outputs. And this is very important because I've interacted with many African, communities, and when you say open, they just feel, open is open for anyone to use and do whatever they want with. But this is not the actual truth, because when you share something openly, you usually assign a license to it, and this license sort of dictates how the user could use your work, and what does they need to do in case so that they could properly attribute this work to you. So again, there are certain challenges that we are currently facing, unfortunately, as we're trying to change the culture. We know that changing culture is something that is really difficult. So the challenges that we currently have is the emphasis on journal articles. Currently, our institutions, us as researchers, we're still struggling to accept that there are so many different types of research outputs. And this, of course, contributes to the resistance that we see. And of course, there is as again, there is limited awareness about the different options that you could use. But what we can do to alleviate that is, start educating our community, start educating our peers and even our students, because I feel the younger you impact people, the greater that they will adopt, the changes that you want them to adopt. So start by educating your peers and your students, and try to advocate for recognition for different research outputs within your institution. And most important thing is, walk the walk and just don't talk the talk. Because you have to lead by example. You have to, start publishing the other research outputs, so that you would be a role model, for other people who will hopefully follow on your footsteps. And then I would like to really talk about ORCID IDs, which are a digital researcher identity. And ORCID IDs are, ORCID stands for Open Research and Contribution ID, and it's basically just like a stamp. It is a unique persistent digital identifier that is assigned to researchers. We've now been talking about DOIs that are assigned to research objects, but even us as researchers could have a unique ID, that sets us apart from other researchers. And this is very important in solving issues related to name ambiguity, and also ensures proper attribution of the work. Because, for example, two researchers could have the same name, but they will have different ORCID IDs. So this will, help alleviate the confusion that could happen in attributing which work to which researcher. And, there are many benefits of using an ORCID ID. First of all, it's a comprehensive research portfolio in one place. So basically it is, a place where you could put and link all of your research outputs, for them to be all in one place. And if anyone wants to read about you, then they could just go to your ORCID ID and find everything that you've done in one place. It could also have the option of being automatically updated when it's linked to systems. For example, you can link it to Scopus, Web of Science, or if you're working on open peer review, you can connect it to peer review, and then whatever you publish within these platforms, it will be automatically added to your ORCID ID. And of course, you could also manually add your research outputs to your ORCID ID. And of course, this is important because it simplifies very much any type of application that you want to apply to, for example, grant application, or you're looking for a job. And if you just have, your ORCID ID, you share your ORCID ID, then the funder or the person who wants to appoint you will be able to see everything that you did in one place. And creating an ORCID ID profile is very simple. You simply have to log in or visit the ORCID.org website, and it's free. Very important, it's free. And they will ask you to fill in some very basic information. They will also ask you to set your privacy preference, and then you could start adding your research output. And again, we should remember to add all types of research output, and all types of research output are supported by ORCID and can be added to ORCID, to your ORCID profile. So yeah, sorry, this slide is a repetition. So, finally, I'll end with the call for action. And the call for action is, first of all, for researchers, we need to create and actively maintain ORCID records. This is very important. We have to make this as, a standard practice. For example, whenever we have a publication, we go to ResearchGate, for example, to add it, then also remember to automatically go to your ORCID profile and add it. It's also, it's important that you deposit and publish all sorts of research output, but most importantly, you have to assign appropriate metadata to these outputs. And the second call of action is for institutions and funders. you know, we hope that institutional funders will promote, you know, the use of repositories and provide training on metadata, and we hope that they encourage a culture of being open, you know, and comprehensive scholarly publication, and you know, value the diverse outputs of research in hiring, promotion, and funding. Because unfortunately, until now, especially when it comes to hiring and promotion, most African institutions still rely on, you know, on articles or journal articles. You know, this is the only way that they would evaluate your work. So it would be good if institution could, you know, keep an open mind to all possible research outputs. And by that, I come to the end of my presentation, and I thank you so much for your kind attention, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Lamis, for your presentation. Yeah, and I completely agree with all your statement, including the first one that you made regarding journal article. It's just one part of the scholarly record. There is still a lot of valuable outputs that has been produced while conducting the research. These outputs also are important. They should be visible, and they should be also discoverable. I have a question to Emmanuel and Fredrick, but before passing that, please, if you have any questions, we can take about 5 or 10 minutes for the questions. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box. So we have 2 use cases, or we already presented 2 use cases today. So I will start with you, Fredrick. What advice do you have for other institutions that are considering or planning to adopt DataCite infrastructure? If you have any advice for these institutions.
Thank you very much, Mohamad and the team, and thank you for the presentation and the sharing your experiences. Yes, what kind of advice? One of the biggest challenge that we've received here in Busitema is bringing the different institutions together when these institutions are at different levels of implementation of their institutional repositories. In Uganda, we have around 5 institutions which already have institutional repositories, and it becomes very easy for such institutions to really appreciate and be able to come on board. Out of a membership of 35, if you have only 5 who are at almost the same level, then you have a huge work to bring all the others on top. So one of the things to deal with this challenge is doing a lot of advocacy. And this advocacy has to be done by the institutions themselves. For example, I'm a university librarian. I cannot go and talk on behalf of a library in another institution. So I need to, first of all, train, for example, a librarian at another institution, be able to get this message, repackage it in a way that will be acceptable, and then they can be able to receive support. So I think that is the most challenging bit. The second one, and the last one, is the attitude of the librarians themselves. You find that while these librarians may have the interest, but they may not have the momentum to get started with the exercise. So you really have to come out very strongly and talk to them and encourage them and come up with all sorts of motivations to have them get started. For example, how do you get started with getting the institutional repository? Consortium of Uganda University Libraries came up with a grant where they wanted to support libraries to establish an institutional repository. But you find that not all institutions applied, and this was an open check for them. So you can see the mindset of the librarians needs to be worked on, and you can only do that if you continuously talk to them, encourage them, and show them the benefit. If you have a converted mind, then you can see actions happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fredrick, for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, and the same question, Emmanuel, if you have any advice for institutions that are considering adopting DataCite infrastructure.
Great. So my advice would be, first, I'll have two sections of the answer. One is the technical part of it. Since I'm a developer, I would say the technical advice would be to learn about DataCite and its infrastructure, how it works, the membership types. All of these are very important information. So it's very good to learn about DataCite and the technology itself before trying to get into integrating it. And then you have to know exactly what you want in your repository. So you have to design your repository to fit your needs. And what are you looking for in your repository? What type of data sets do you want to put there? What type of users do you want for your repository? And all of these things are very key in designing the repository that you want for your institution. So once you have these, then you can try and match it with DataCite's schema and infrastructure to see where you would actually get advantage of that infrastructure. I believe these are very important things to consider, and I would advise anyone that's about to embark in a journey of building a repository to make sure that they have these first in hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Very helpful. And now, with an eye on the clock, let's see. I can see a question about open access, open data access, as well as metadata from Baco. Can you add more details, Baco, to this question so we can check it further? And with eye on the clock, I just want to have, like, if you have any final thoughts in less than 1 minute from Tekleweyni, Lamis, and Sara, and from you, just from your own perspective based on your presentation. I know that each presentation was covering different topic, talking maybe to different stakeholders, like you, Lamis, were mainly talking to academic researchers. So just one main thought that you want to share before we close this webinar.
I
Yeah,
think
Lamis.
I could start. I think what I want to share is that we have to acknowledge that change is not easy, but it's doable, you know. But one of the most important things that could help in affecting these changes, having a supportive community. So I would encourage all researchers to try and join as many open science communities as they can to learn more, and, you know, to have that support system that would help them navigate these stormy waters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lamis. Yeah. And Tekleweyni, do you want to share any final thoughts?
Okay, thank you, Mohamad. I'm happy. I left one slide is remaining, but it's already shared. Thank you. I want to say something. It is possible to realize the open research infrastructure for the benefits of public in our local setting. Where before I become a DataCite ambassador, I started to create awareness with my open access team at Amanuel University Department of Information Science. Now, at the beginning, there was challenges, but now we are approaching, we are reaching into consensus agreement. We only left some activities. We are increasing our Amanuel University, for example, increasing journal publishing system after continuous engagement. Then we are also ready for launching initial repository within short period of time as much as possible. So there is a progress. If we are working together, we can boost the open science, open research infrastructure for the benefits of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Tekleweyni. I completely agree with you. It's about working together and building that community of practice. And again, we really appreciate all your efforts in raising the awareness, which, as you highlighted, one of the key challenges when we talk about PIDs and open metadata, the awareness and the low levels of awareness. Okay, with eye on the clock, Sara, I don't know if you want to share any final thoughts before we close.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to build on what Lamis and Tekleweyni have just said, that, well, we all have a role. We can all contribute to enrichment, to better metadata, and, you know, better insights. We can look at research in its entirety, because research doesn't not happen in a vacuum. We all work together, and it's important to see all these different parts coming together to provide a legible insights. It's something that we can actually work with and understand. And thank you all so much for taking part in this process.
Great. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your final thoughts. Yeah, thanks to everyone, to be honest, who contributed to this. I'm really, really happy and excited about it. It was really, really good to have this webinar dedicated to the Sub-Saharan African community, to talk to them and share also different perspectives. So I really want to thank all the speakers for the fantastic presentations, and to all the attendees. All the slides will be shared in the follow-up emails. The YouTube recording as well will be there if you want to listen again to the webinar, or if you want also to share it with your colleagues who didn't get a chance to attend. Again, thank you so much for contributing to this, and yeah, let's stay in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.